You work better as a hoe than a senator. Go back to making sandwiches. You suck at this politics stuff. These are just a few of the comments that I've received in the last year that I've been running for office. Because there's this loud and small but outspoken group of men that wants to take us backwards, to erase the gains that women have made, and we are here to tell them today we're not going back. Say it with me now. We're not going back. We're not going back. One more. We're not going back. I'm Caroline Gleich. I am a small business owner, an advocate for gender equity and for our environment, and your Democratic candidate for United States Senate, Utah. And I'm not running to become the next Mitt Romney. I am running to become the first Caroline Gleich. To become the first woman from Utah to go to the U.S. Senate. And I've worked on policy at the local, state, and federal levels. I've testified to the House and to the Senate. I've climbed and skied some of the highest mountains in Utah and around the world, using my platform with sport to inspire positive change. And in 2019, I climbed the world's highest peak, Mount Everest, or Chomolungma, as a climb for equality, to highlight the disproportionate numbers of women on the world's highest peak, because when you look at who is at the highest levels on top, you still see an absence of women, and we are trying to change that. We are going to change that. And in the last 2 years, since the Dobbs decision and the overturning of Roe versus Wade, we've seen unprecedented attacks on Utahns' ability to access life-saving reproductive health care. 1 in 5 OBGYNs are leaving states like Utah that have abortion restrictions or uncertainty due to these legal challenges, and it is setting back our reproductive health care. Makes it much harder for the average Utahn to get an appointment with a gynecologist. And we have seen increased rates of the number of mothers who die during childbirth. And new data reveals another unexpected consequence. Young women, even in states where abortion remains legal, are foregoing having children because they are afraid to get pregnant because of the changes that have followed the Dobbs decision. And we've seen it spread into attacks on IVF, which is deeply personal to me because 2 years ago, my husband and I decided to freeze our eggs and embryos for fertility preservation. And I shared it on social media to help break the stigma and to normalize discussions around family planning and fertility. Because deciding to become a parent is not a choice that should be forced on anyone. It is one of the biggest decisions in a person's life that involves enormous challenges. And so wherever you are on your fertility journey today, whether you're a proud childless cat lady, whether you dream of having a family, or you have 10 kids, I see you, I acknowledge you, and it's awesome. We have that choice. We're not going back. We're not going back.
We're not going back.
We're not going back. And my opponent for the U.S. Senate seat has said, I wish as a man I didn't have to make these decisions. Well, John Curtis, you don't. And it is long past time to end this egregious government overreach into our most personal and intimate decisions. He said that he will protect IVF, but he and other House Republicans have introduced legislation, the Life Begins at Conception Act, that will effectively ban IVF. So which one is it? Because we're tired of this flip-flopping, and we're not going back. One time, we're not going back. So I'd love to ask him, if life begins at conception, do we give out a birth certificate at conception? No. Do pregnant people get to use the carpool lane? No. Should I get child tax credits for the embryos we froze? No, because they're not children, not yet. And overturning Roe, it was never about protecting life. It was about controlling women, because if our elected leaders were serious about the right to life, they would clean up our air. They would save our Great Salt Lake, and they would pass common sense gun reform. Yes. And if they they truly cared about mothers and families and children, they would pass and expand paid parental leave, fund universal pre-K, and ensure that students have breakfast and lunch. And Utah, you deserve a U.S. Senator who will support those things and who will fiercely defend our reproductive freedom and trust our families to make the best decisions for themselves. And a senator who will stand up to the bullies. As a woman running for office, I received a lot of hate online. I still do every day. But I won't allow this hateful vitriol and these attacks and actions to be normalized. The point of the attacks is to silence us, to scare us, so we silence ourselves. But we're gonna keep showing up. We're gonna keep speaking up. We're gonna keep taking up space. We're gonna run for office and we're gonna win because we're not going back. Two more. We're not going back. We're not going back. And if you too want a future for Utah where we can lead with an ethic of care, compassion, and this desire to improve the lives of others, join me. Go to CarolineForUtah.com, get involved, chip in a few bucks if you can, and Utah, please vote Caroline Gleich for U.S. Senate by November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One more time for Caroline.
If they've already voted.